the vast majority of people today believe that giants are just myth and fairy tale. But if you went back just over 100 years, you would find quite the opposite. The reason for this is because, in these 100 years or so, the elites have undertaken a massive task to make the topic of giants completely secret and hidden from the public. Whereas in the late 1800s, institutes like the Smithsonian and other scientific organizations were going out doing archaeological digs, digging up giant remains, skeletons, artifacts. They are excavating the burial mounds, which are sacred. They were doing this, they're even publishing their findings. And some of these are still on the record as evidence. But all of this stopped in the late 1800s when the 1900s started to come around. Now why is this? Why would they suddenly stop reporting all of this and start saying that giants are myth, a fairy tale? Are they all going to turn around and say this lie that, oh, all the bones we found were just mammoth bones or dinosaur bones? Or are you going to admit that you were all stupid? Of course not. You're not stupid. These are very intelligent people. They are documenting their findings, the skeletons of giant humans. The vast majority of these skeletons were from 7 to 15 feet tall, but quite a few spanned up to 33 feet. These were the ones that have been reported and are on record. The reality is, the elites knew about the giants in North America for hundreds of years. When they first arrived in the 1600s, you have to remember America was their new Atlantis. They wrote about this before they went there. This is a well-established fact amidst the elitist circles. When they got to their new Atlantis and they met the Native Americans, they learned all about the giants. They went out, they saw the giants, and of course they kidnapped, took captive, and even killed some of the giants and studied them. And this was the 1600s. They began taking, stealing, and yes, sometimes buying the land up from the Native Americans more and more through the 1700s and the 1800s. They amassed so much land which they sanctioned off as either private or military even, or parks or national parks, land where the public generally couldn't go. They did this because they were sanctioning off the land where the giants lived, to help reduce the interaction between the people and the giants. But this was not necessarily for our benefit. They did not go out with public advertising back then in any type of publication that existed or any type of news that existed back then saying we're doing this to protect you from giants. Everybody knew the giants existed, but the elites found out where all the giants are, which is underground. The Native Americans kept this secret for a very long time. But all secrets must be told when the time comes. And long ago, the word got out. And when the elites found out and explored the underground regions, they found the cavern systems were full of giants. This is why the elitists made all their underground cities with tunnel systems connecting to underground cave systems. This is why there are cave systems and caves under all their lodges. This is why many new cities are built on top of old cities, literally on top. There's so much that is underground, so much going on underground, and all of it was kept secret. And the giants that were on the surface, there were thousands of people in America, the early Americans, unfortunately not the Native Americans, but of the Americans that took over the land and moved in and everything. There were thousands of them that were living alongside these giants. They would come to the surface on a daily basis. So the elites, even from the 1600s, they kept the underground knowledge top secret. And just, it was just a matter of fact that there were giants that came to the surface, or on the surface. So they let it be like that. In the late 1800s, they found out something so great that they had to take it a step further. Now, they couldn't kill off all the thousands of people who lived alongside the giants and knew them. Families lived in the same places for generations, maybe even 200 years or so. So what they did is, buy up more land, sanction off more land, make deals with people, bribe them into selling off their land and all of that. But they can't get rid of everybody. So what did they do? They make the topic taboo. They censor the topic. They remove all public knowledge of the giants, and they stop reporting it. They make science even declare that it's impossible that giants ever existed. And that is why, since the late 1800s, there was utter silence. And ever since then, a growing taboo saying that giants are myth and fairy tale. This is to keep us dumb to what's under our feet. And it's not just in North America. The same is on every inhabited continent across the world. But if I was to speak more detail on that, it would require another video. So I'll just stick to North America for this video. And it was around this time, the early 1900s, that they began building underground cities and bases. And it has been over 100 years that these bases and cities have been built. Way beyond the billions of dollars, into the trillions of dollars being spent on these massive underground projects that are so top secret. What are they for? What is going to happen on the surface that is so bad that all the people will have to flee to these underground safe havens? It must be something terrible because they're keeping it so top secret. What did they find out that made them want to start building underground bases and cities? Made them want to keep the topic totally secret? What could be of that scale of magnitude? Well, the elites are spiritual people. They know the cultures around the world. They've read their prophecies. They know their texts, what they believe. They know how many prophecies from around the world that state the giants are underground, and that in the days of the apocalypse, they will come to the surface. So when the elites learned of this, and had finally gained the technology that made it possible for them in the late 1800s to venture further underground, this is when they discovered these underground regions. This is when they realized there are empires under the ground. The severity of this, the magnificence of these empires, and the sheer power and monstrosity of these beings was so great that the elites had to keep this topic secret. And this even branches into extraterrestrials. Why? Because, as I've mentioned in my other short video series on extraterrestrials, 99.9% of what we perceive to be UFOs and aliens are actually beings that have always lived on our own planet. They are terrestrials, not extraterrestrials. The vast majority of these few races live underground. They always have. It's not personal theory. That is what all these ancient cultures from around the world have stated. They've always lived underground. The Hindu texts state for millions of years. When man first emerged, these beings were here, in these places living, and they live there to this very day. But man did not have the ability to venture down there and discover this. This is why Jade Helm, the great mysterious operation, if you look at a map of all the places that Jade Helm operated in as a map of America, and if you overlay this with a map of America showing all the cavern systems, you will find that Jade Helm operated over all the cavern systems in America. Not every single one, obviously. The odds of this being a coincidence are impossible. This is planned on purpose, and it's being brushed away from us, kept from under our noses so we can't see it. And furthermore, if you take a map of America showing where all the supposed underground bases and cities are, strikingly you will find that again, they fall in the same places as the Jade Helm operations and the underground caverns. Can all of these three maps, when overlaid, showing all the same regions being occupied, be a mere coincidence or a sign of something great? The elites have been sending us hints in movies for approximately 7 or 8 years. And it's around the same time when the great, massive, titanic sounds have been heard around the world. It all happened around 2010, 11, 12. Around then, all these great sounds started happening. People think they're coming from the sky, but they're not. When you ring a bell, the air sounds like it's making the sound, but it's carrying the sound. The bell is vibrating because the pendulum inside the bell is striking it, making the vibration. So the bell is producing the sound because the pendulum is hitting it. The air is carrying the sound. So when we around the world hear these great apocalyptic noises, as they call them, it sounds like they're coming from the sky because the air, the sky, is carrying them as the medium. The earth is acting as the bell, and what is inside the earth is acting like the pendulum. That is why these gigantic noises sound like giant footsteps, growls, giant things being pushed, giant gates being opened, giant stone blocks being pushed, giant grinding noises, all these inexplainable noises, even giant trumpeting sounds. The evidence is right there for us. And as I've pointed out in some of my videos, when 2012 came around, according to Mayan prophecy, it states that the 9 lords of Xibalba will come to the earth. Xibalba is not another planet. Xibalba is, according to their own texts, the underworld, the place within our earth, underground. The underground empires, when the 9 lords, who are giants, by the way, would come to the surface. And if you go back and check when all these great sounds started to be heard, it was around the end of 2011, the major ones. A few happened in the year or two before that, but on the vast whole, it was when 2012 rolled around. Nobody has really ever noticed this. Everybody overlooks it. And nobody is expecting giants to come upon us, even though they've hidden it in so many movies, even children's animated movies, for nearly a decade now. In so many games, so many shows. The evidence is all around us. The sounds are being heard around the world by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. It can no longer be denied. There is something titanic within the earth making these sounds. Jade Helm was preparing for something. The underground bases and cities have been prepared for something. They've spent 100 years and trillions of dollars building these places for what? Something huge, an epidemic, an infection-like epidemic that will come upon the surface. Why else would they be making them?